Have you ever had a nosebleed from insane arousal?
Um, no, but one time, and this is a total rabbit hole,
Yeah.
I was having sex with my ex, and they smashed my nose on the top of their head and gave me a nosebleed, and then I bled all over his mother's white sheets.
Okay, so kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Welcome back to Beez in the Trap, where the Z is universal, and we have monthly themes to talk about our favorite taboo subjects. It's your host, Jordan, my co-host, Tack.
Hello.
How's it? How you been? How's everything going?
Good. I keep starting these right when the edible kicks in, so I feel like you
Yeah?
might be able to hear that transition as I'm like writing that consciousness through these. But no, I'm really good. I've been working out a lot, trying to get my sexy right.
Yeah.
Um,
All
I'm
right.
having a white claw. What about you?
I'm just, I came back from my trip from Miami. Fucking great. It was amazing. May and I had a great fucking time. Almost cried on the plane ride back, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, I'm back and in school and working. So
Did you get any in-flight drinks?
no,
Oh, fucked up. God damn
yeah,
it.
we didn't drink the entire time we were there.
Oh, man, the in-flight drinks are like what makes the flight. I think. I on one of my flights, my flight back from Texas one time, I sat next to some lady that was like, I think off of her meds and having a breakdown and yelling at people, and the flight attendant ladies they like escorted me to the very back of the plane, like behind the bathrooms where the
Yeah.
mini bar was, and that's where they hang out. And I got to they gave me free drinks and just got to hang out back there with them.
Okay.
It
Wow.
ruled, yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was cool. Um, so so last week I talked about God Shintoism, which is like that kind of not religion thing, and then I also talked a lot about hentai, and I forgot to include the best my my favorite story about hentai, and that was my introduction to hentai. And I've like grown up with like the light-hearted animes like Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z and Full Metal Alchemist and Cowboy Bebop, like the ones that were on TV. And I feel like
Hmm.
an ongoing trope through those, at least I think I remember it from those, is there's like this running gag that I've only ever seen in anime, where it's always someone that's relatively young, and when they see somebody that they think is really hot and like they're naked or they're like doing something really sexy, they kind of get like that weird face, and then they get a nosebleed, and I've always been
Yeah.
like why the fuck are they getting a nosebleed? And I asked one of my friends that was into anime in high school, and he was like, "Yeah, I guess sometimes when your brain gets like too horny, your nose just starts bleeding." And then he was like, "At least in Japan, that's the case. I've never heard of it here." And I was like, "Yeah, me neither. What the fuck?" And then that same friend that I had that was in anime, I was hanging out at his house, and he's like, "Have you ever seen hentai?" And I was like, "No, what is that?" And he showed me it on his computer, and we were just kind of like sitting like both of us at his desk glued to the desktop as he was just scrolling through images that he had saved off of 4chan. And it's weird to think about now, but like I remember, so it was not at all weird to just be like thigh by thigh next to my friend in high school staring at these hot pictures. And I don't know what his heart rate was, but I know that something was dripping on the desk in front of us. and I looked down and it was blood, and I was gushing blood from my nose. Like, I was just bleeding all over the place. And that is my first and since only nosebleed I've ever had.
Are you fucking with me?
No, I'm not. If we ever want to, I can call up that friend and be like, "Remember when I got that nosebleed? Can you recap that experience for me?" And he'll tell the same story. He's like, "Yeah, you got blood everywhere." I've never had a nosebleed since. It was my first time seeing hentai.
That's
Yeah,
so fucking wild.
yeah. Have you ever had a nosebleed from insane arousal?
Um, no. But one time, and this is a total rabbit hole,
Yeah.
I was having sex with my ex, and they smashed my nose on the top of their head and gave me a nosebleed, and then I bled all over his mother's white sheets.
Okay, so kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Damn, was your
Not
nose like
really, but
was your nose like broken or did
no,
it?
it was like sprained,
Oh
but it was
shit!
like bruised and stuff. Yeah.
Damn.
Um,
T- Today I learned what bruising is.
yeah.
Not to deep in this rabbit hole, but bruising is just bleeding under the skin. I didn't know that.
You didn't?
No, it's just blood under there. I had no idea.
Damn.
Shout out to the Sawbones podcast teaching me what
Yeah.
bruising is. They did a this week's whole episode was about bruising.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
and speaking of watching things that have a physical reaction, I could go into my first topic unless you have one that you're really itching to fire
Nope.
away.
Dive into it, my guy.
Fuck yeah! So I recently got tattooed on my knuckles the words Harakiri. Um, I could go into a lot. It Harakiri is the honorable samurai suicide by like depending on under what circumstances. If a samurai feels like their life is at an end, or at least their honor is at an end, they'll do this very specific suicide ritual where they use their
Yes.
yeah.
Yep. I learned about this in dojo. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Fuck yeah. They'll use their shorter sword, which I think is called the wakizashi, and they'll hold it with both hands as you do, and they'll stab it under their left ribs and then
Mm-hmm.
pull it to under their right ribs, disemboweling themselves. And there's someone nearby that is holding a longer sword, ready to cut their head off after they've performed the ceremony. And depending on like what region or like what time period maybe not only is it a horizontal slice, but after they complete the horizontal slice, in some cases they also stab themselves lower and then pull it up, doing a vertical one too.
Yeah.
And it's after they make that X, or at least the horizontal one, will the second, that's, I don't know what it's called in Japanese or Chinese, but in the translations they just refer to them as their second. The second is the one standing there with the sword that'll cut their head off.
Mm.
So I got that tattooed on my knuckles for a bunch of like not downer reasons, I promise, but reasons that I don't need to get into here. Uh, and I was looking at movies that I have downloaded throughout the past, like I don't know from where, just my collection of movies. And I saw that I had one called Harakiri from 1962, and I don't even remember getting that movie. I don't know who gave me it or what, but I had it on my computer just collecting dust. And I googled it really quick to see like what the gist of it was, and mainly what I got was it's widely regarded as like the samurai movie. So like how most people consider like Godfather like the crime movie, or To Kill a Mockingbird being the like movie, I guess. I don't know. But
Yeah.
Harakiri is like that level of classic about samurai movies. So I put it on and I watched it, and it was the most intense movie I've ever seen in my life. And I could summarize the whole movie in about 5 minutes. So if you're not looking for spoilers, I'd go ahead and skip maybe that far because I'll try to have it all summed up by then. But spoiler ahoy, because this is one intense ass journey. movie starts with Emperor writing in his journal, and he's like, "Today was a normal day. We got a shipment of fish in, and then a samurai showed up at our palace and said he wishes to perform harakiri here in front of an audience." And that's where the movie starts. And this dude comes up. He's like a samurai in dirty robes with his long sword and his short sword, and he like requests a meeting. And he's like, "I'm here to perform harakiri in front of like your palace of other like samurai for honor." And they're like, "Okay, we'll get you a meeting with our like head honcho." And he's like, "All right, cool. My name is Hanshiro." That's not the order that it happened, but his name was Hanshiro. And Hanshiro is like talking to whoever is in charge of the room in there, and like the we'll call him the receptionist. And
Mm-hmm.
the receptionist is like, another samurai just recently came here to perform harakiri. Do you want me to tell you what happened? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, all right. His name was Hitome. And then the movie basically just recaps the last 3 minutes of someone coming like, hey, I want to kill myself. And I'm like, all right, cool. We'll get to a meeting with the head honcho. But Hitome's in this flashback, they tell Hitome like, we're looking for an honorable samurai, and someone that's willing to come commit harakiri must be honorable as fuck. We would give you a job in a heartbeat. Hell, we would even we would promote you up to the highest ranks for being this honorable. But, because you're going to kill yourself. So if you don't kill yourself, then that makes you a liar. So you got to kill yourself now.
Oh my fucking god.
And he's like, holy shit. Could you guys please give me like a day or two to think about this? And they're like, oh, that is not honorable. Like, you need to kill yourself here because we're all ready now. And he's like, please, I don't want to kill myself yet. Give me a couple days to think about it. And they're like, no, honor says that you wanted to do it, so now you have to do it, and you have to use your own sword too. And he's like, and he like shows them his sword, and his swords are made out of bamboo. They're just wooden blades, almost like they're fake toy swords. And they're like, holy fuck, get a load of this guy. He brought wooden swords. That's pathetic. Kill yourself now. And he's like, okay, well, I guess I have no choice. So there's like a 5 minute scene of him trying to stab the wooden sword into his belly. And like right when he gets it in, he like looks up at the second and he's like, please just kill me. And he's like, no, you haven't done shit. You got to pull it across first. And he's like, I can't. It's too hard. He's like, well, I'm not going to kill you until you do it. So then it's like another 5 minutes of him trying to cut open his belly with a dull wooden sword, and it clearly like wouldn't work. So he's like writhing in pain, and then he just sticks his tongue out and bites it off and bleeds to death right there. So the receptionist is like, so Hanshiro, you still want to kill yourself? And he kind of smiles and he's like, huh, yeah, I do. And my sword is sharp. And they're like, damn, okay. He like Hanshiro is ready to do it, and he's like, I believe I get to pick my second. And they're like, yeah, if you want, sure. And he's like, I want this dude. And they're like, that dude's actually homesick today, so we're not going to do that. And he's like, all right, well then I want this dude. And they're like, uh, he's just saying these names, by the way, like he's researched to this palace before. He's not just pointing him out because they're not here. He's like, I want this guy's name. And they're like, he's sick. And he's like, well, then give me this guy's name. And they're like, actually, he's also sick. That's weird. Sorry. Nope. Pick someone else. And he's like, ugh, okay, pathetic. I want this third dude. And they're like, what the fuck? He's homesick too. What are the odds that all three of them are sick? This guy's up to some shit. Like, give us a minute. And they go back to deliberate what to do, and they're like, what the fuck's going on? How did he just name our three sick employees? This guy's up to something bad. And they go back and they're like, so that's weird, just kill yourself. And he's like, I believe we abide by honor here, so you should at least send someone to go see if they're actually sick and try to get one of them to come do this for me. And they're like, ugh, fine. So now I guess we're going to wait. And he's like, let me tell you what brought me here while we're waiting. And he's like, so my son Hotome was sent to go get medicine for his wife because she just gave birth and the baby is like super duper sick. Like the baby's not really breathing. And now the mom is also not really breathing. So we sent my son Hatome to go find a doctor, and we never saw him again. So what you're telling me is Hatome came here and killed himself with a wooden sword because he was too poor or tried to sell his actual swords to get a doctor and evidently couldn't. So he came here with wooden swords wanting to kill himself because he has lost his he dishonorably lost his whole family and doesn't even have actual swords. And you motherfuckers did that to him? That's super fucked up. And he's like, so before I kill myself, let me give you these. And he pulls out three ponytails, and he throws them all to them, and it shows the names of the three samurai that were all homesick today. And he's like, correct me if I'm wrong, but honor says that if you lose your ponytail, you should just kill yourself, right? And he's like, so I mean, I could have killed them, but I just wanted to take their ponytails. And he's like, look how your three samurai would rather say they're homesick than come into work without their ponytail. So I think we can all agree that your honor code is bullshit. And they're like, what the fuck? Just kill him. So then it's like a 20 samurai versus one fight as he's like fucking them all up, but he's like getting super fucked up too. And he starts running through the palace, and he grabs like their idol that they pray to, and he holds it over his head as the samurai, like a bunch more like soldiers, samurai fill the room, and even a bunch of them with guns come in and they point their guns at him, and he smashes the idol on the ground and then takes out his sword and just slices open his belly while holding eye contact with all of them. And then after he's like just done harakiri and just staring at him, then they open fire and kill him. And then the movie ends with him like the emperor updating his notebook, and he's like, the samurai performed harakiri. He was an honorable samurai. That's all for today. And that's how the movie ended. And I was like, holy fucking shit. And this movie is 60 years old. It was one hell of a wild ride. And I cannot enough recommend watching that movie that I just spoiled. It's so fucking good.
Fuck.
Yeah. Oh man.
That gives serious like Kill Bill vibes. I don't know how to explain
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Oh my god, it totally does. It yeah, I feel like if Quentin Tarantino fucking loved that movie. um yeah, I don't even know where to watch it. I don't know where I got it from, but yeah, 1962 Harakiri. It still slaps 60 years going.
I fuck.
It's not even like because there is a lot of bloodshed and stuff in that movie, but when movies are that old, they didn't try to have special effects.
Yeah.
They're like, we'll just show it from this angle and blood will splatter. So it
Mhm.
still holds up. Like if other than it being in black and white, it looks like it could have come out in the 90s. It's fucking cool. Yeah. So that's Harakiri. That ending scene. I think you can YouTube Harakiri final scene because it's so fucking cool watching him do that big fight and then just commit Harakiri while holding the most like stink eye contact with all of them as he does it, like without even flinching. It's so cool. I was really afraid that I was going to be like lost in translation because it's a super duper old movie from a region I know almost nothing about, but it like
Yeah.
explains it all as it goes. Where they're like, so I believe you follow honor, which honor says I have to do this and this and this. So there was like no context that you needed to know beforehand.
Mhm.
Yeah, it ruled. So
Fucking A.
yeah, that's Harakiri.
Do you have like the director or producer of that movie?
Yeah. The director was Masaki Kobayashi, and let's see what he has also done. He's a director from he is dead. Um, yeah, he died in the '60s too. He did a bunch of other samurai movies. They're probably all just as good. He did another movie since then called Samurai Rebellion. He did two of them before that called The Human Condition. Three of them
Hmm.
before that called The Human Condition. Damn, he did a lot of movies. But yeah, it was written by some other writers. Written by Yasuhiko Takiguchi and Shinobu Hashimoto. It stars a bunch of other people's whose name I could try, but I'm just on the IMDb page. It's 2 hours and 13 minutes. Came out in 1962. The synopsis is kind of cool. It's just a sentence. When a Ronin requesting seppuku at a feudal lord's palace is told of the brutal suicide of another Ronin who previously visited, he reveals how their paths are intertwined, and in doing so, challenges the clan's integrity, which I think I
Fuck
captured
yeah.
perfectly.
I'm so down to watch this movie after this.
Yeah, it's fucking
Like,
cool.
I'm a big fan of Quentin Tarantino and Kill Bill.
Yeah, and it has that kind of like the only instruments throughout the whole movie I think are just someone playing a sitar, like that super dope sounding Asian guitar, and just like
Yeah.
occasional like twangs here and there. They just give you goosebumps. It's so good. Easily in my top five favorite movies of all time. Anyway, yeah. Do you have another thing that you would want to dish out? Because I have another one I could go right into from that.
No, not at the moment. Let's just see where this takes us, I think.
This one I probably can't talk as much about the movie Harakiri, but I would be remiss if we were talking about Asian culture and I didn't give a special shout out section to Final Fantasy. It is an incredibly long running franchise that was really popular in Japan up until, or sorry, in Japan only until like I think the mid '90s, and then it came over to America, but or the U.S. But the way that Final Fantasy has like been developed and everything is so fucking cool. It was SquareSoft, I believe SquareSoft's company that made games, and they were about to like go out of business. You know, like we're gonna put all of our eggs into this one basket, and but like in development for it, they were like, it'd be kind of cool if it it's going to be a fantasy game, so if it was something F fantasy, like we want some alliteration in there, it would just sound cool. And they were like, let's just go with Final Fantasy because it's like our last game, and also Fighting Fantasy would sound cool, but that's already been taken by something, so let's just go with Final Fantasy. And it was like the whole premise of the game, at least the first one, is that it was meant to be an epic story. So playing it would kind of feel like reading a fantasy book. And the best way to come up with gameplay for that was just Dungeons and Dragons. So
Hmm.
the gameplay developer, he just purely modeled it off of tabletop role playing games. So that's why when you see people play early Final Fantasy games, it's just each character has a little menu that pops up and it goes in turns. Or like this character is going to attack, use an item, cast a spell, or run away. And that's how
Hmm.
you play through the whole game, is picking those decisions for those characters. And then the enemies, you obviously don't get to pick what they do, but depending on how fast they go kind of affects the turn order. But you play through these games of just getting to know these characters, and then it kind of throws you in the instance of like, okay, now a bunch of guards are here and they're attacked, like they all have their guns pointed at you. What are you going to
Hmm.
do? And you can choose like, well, I think this character would probably attack them. And then if you're like everybody who's played them, you just always hit attack, 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 attack for all of them until you're like, oh, this person can cast really big fire spells. So you develop strategy like that going through it, but then eventually the battles start like incorporating characters from the storyline, and usually by the end of a Final Fantasy, at least I've played like 7 of them, it always ends with the exact same feeling that I get after finishing a really good book. Where, like, when you see those ending
Hmm.
credits, it feels like turning the last page. And you're like, damn, I have grown as a person because of that. and like I don't know if that's the feeling they were going for, but that's what they did. So every subsequent Final Fantasy is an entirely different, to be honest, fantasy romance story. But
Mm-hmm.
Romeo and Juliet is like just 100% a Final Fantasy game from you know 2,000 years ago, 3,000, no, 1,300 years ago, I think. Oh my god, that's embarrassing. It's the 1700s, I'm pretty sure, is when Shakespeare
Yeah.
was doing stuff. But
I want to.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I just wanted to add in that, like, my two other brothers are huge, like, game geeks.
yeah.
And I grew up very young. I think I was like 3 or 4 when my brothers got a PS1. And I grew up with Final Fantasy. Not necessarily playing it all the time, but I just want to state and add in, like, again to this,
Mhm.
that, like, Final Fantasy was one of those games that really kept up on their graphics and, like, improved, like, the fuckload out of it as
Yeah,
they
they got
created more
really
games.
beautiful.
And my favorite being, I was really young, so I didn't really understand how to play the games all the time. But I was just telling my coworkers this. I was obsessed with Final Fantasy X-2 as a kid because of
Fuck
the
yeah, that was
graphics
my
in it.
intro.
Like Final Fantasy X was also great.
Mhm.
Yeah. So no joke, I used to restart the game Final Fantasy X-2 over and over again just to watch the intro to that fucking game because the
Okay.
graphics was just at that time so fucking good. Well, I was gonna say the only other game, especially at the time, that I think beat it in graphics and just
Mhm.
really memorized me, Kingdom Hearts.
Oh hell yeah! Oh my god! And Kingdom Hearts is, if you don't know, it's a peanut butter and jelly of Disney characters with Final Fantasy characters.
Yeah,
But
it's so good.
it's fucking perfect. My coin jar is a Kingdom Hearts doll. But I was gonna say the first
Yeah.
15 minutes of Final Fantasy X-2 are at least of the gameplay is grueling.
Yeah, it is.
You're like running away from a boss and you have to keep fighting it. It's like
Hmm.
it's very annoying. But specifically Final Fantasy X. 10-2 was my intro, which I heard like after I got really into it. I heard 10 was like kind of a better story. So then I got
Hmm.
10, and I played and beat the fuck out of 10. And there was at least two moments in the like cinematic cutscenes that really drove home that this is a tragic romance. And I was like crying in my room holding the controller, like, oh my god, Titus
Hmm.
and Yuna. And so it's the McElroy brothers pointed out that Final Fantasy was really common amongst the drama crowd and pretty
Hmm.
much made fun of by all the other crowds. So it was like 100% a weeaboo clique type of thing in school, at least when it was coming up in like my
Hmm.
demographic. But God, they're so fucking fun, man. They keep churning out new ones because it's like every one they've done has just gotten more and more of an audience. We're like starting with Final Fantasy VII in the late '90s when it came to the PS, or it was on the PS1 exclusive, and it had these really fucking cool looking graphics. Like the art style just whips ass. The music is really cool. The
Hmm.
story's fucking awesome. The the final boss Sephiroth has like, he's just so cool looking. Like all of it's so fucking good. They remade seven recently, or they're remaking it in installments, and it's like not turn based anymore, which kind of bums me out a lot. But
That's
that
what I
makes
heard.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, the turn based style, like I'm a D&D slut, so I love that. But
Yeah, Final Fantasy is just fucking. I can see what you're talking about. Whereas like would you say the weeaboo like
mhm,
click?
yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, maybe not nowadays, but during that time, like cosplayed a lot of Final Fantasy characters.
Oh fuck yeah. Yeah, God, the
So I
art
feel like
direction in all of
cosplay
them
was just like,
is
yeah,
made for it.
yeah,
Uh,
totally. Like,
I don't know if we're able to play any music in here too, but there's like a recurring theme sample written by Nobuo Uetsumoto, and it's one of my wake up alarms. Um, it's such a beautiful song. It's called Prelude. If you ever want to look it up, actually, I'm pretty sure that I can find. It's
I'll
just
just
like
put it in the description. So,
yeah, well, the first like 5 seconds because it's kind of just repeating. Let me see if yeah, I bet I could. I bet maybe. No, never mind. It's gonna play an ad first. Fuck it. All right. Yeah. Anyway, that's Final Fantasy. It's cool. I recommend the ones that came out around like 90 to mid 2000s because those are my favorite. But, which is 7, 8, 9, and 10. I didn't like 8 very much. As your brother Sam fucking loves 8, and it's because of Sam that I've started it like 3 times, but can't
mhm.
get into it.
Yeah, I 10 out of 10 recommend if you want to get into Final Fantasy, especially for the art and the storyline. Start off with Final Fantasy X and then play Final Fantasy X too.
Yes. Not to Oh God, I was gonna say not to spoil 10, but I want to like give you an inkling of like why the story is so fucking cool. It's just another tragic romance, but there's like certain details about it that I don't want to spoil, but they're what make it cool. So yeah, just imagine a fantasy tragic romance.
Oh,
It's so good. Well, that's
all
my Final
right.
Fantasy
But
spiel.
I I'm here for it. I fucking maybe we should do like a theme of like video games one of these days.
Uh, I could, I would like that a lot.
Yeah. Um, for all the listeners, if you have any recommendations of video games to talk about, email us, and we'll definitely talk about those in any video game, um, like themed videos we do.
Yeah, I think
Um,
we've already brought Zelda and now Final Fantasy into this, which is my two favorites.
yeah.
So, well,
Um,
I don't want to exclude Dark Souls, but we'll get to that later.
do you? All right. Um,
Do you want to dive into
topics
one?
for Asian culture.
Hmm.
I thought maybe we'd talk about your ninjutsu and then just like the difference from that in martial arts in general.
Perfect. Because I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be taking a lot of this straight from Wikipedia, as I printed out the Wikipedia article for ninjutsu. It's not super duper long. It's actually like 1/4 of the length of tofu, which I also printed out. But ninjutsu, also known as ninpo or shinobu jutsu, which slaps, that's cool as fuck. There's a hardness category called non competitive, country of origin from Japan. Um, Ninjutsu, sometimes used interchangeably with the modern term ninpo, we've already got that far, is the strategy and tactics of unconventional warfare, guerrilla warfare, and espionage purportedly practiced by the ninja. Ninjutsu was a separate discipline in some traditional Japanese schools which integrated study of more conventional martial arts, like taijutsu, along with shuriken jutsu, kenjutsu, sojutsu, bojutsu, and others. So I know shuriken jutsu must be the art of like throwing. I have no
Hmm.
idea what kenjutsu or sojutsu would be, but then bojutsu being martial arts with a staff. While there's an international martial arts organization representing several modern styles of ninjutsu, the historical lineage of these styles is disputed. Some schools claim to be the only legitimate era of the art, but ninjutsu is not centralized like modernized martial arts such as judo or karate. Togakura Ryu claims to be the oldest recorded form of ninjutsu and claims to have survived past the 16th century. We got some history in here. That's actually it. We have only the history. I thought there was more. I was like, let's see if we can skip past history, but it's only history. Let's see if I can kind of paraphrase this. It's only like 3 paragraphs, so fuck it. Spying in Japan dates as far back as Prince Shotoku. According to the SIDENOTE, the first open use of ninjutsu during a military campaign was in the Genpei War, when Minamoto no Kuro Yoshitsune, I am killing these, chose warriors to serve as shinobi during a battle. This manuscript goes on to say that during the Kenmu era, Kosunoki Masashige frequently used ninjutsu. There's a lot of articles linked with these. Let's see. Let's skip. Throughout history, the shinobi were assassins, scouts, and spies who were hired mostly by territorial lords known as daimyo. Despite being able to assassinate in stealth, their primary role was as spies and scouts. Shinobi are mainly noted for their use of stealth and deception. They would use this to avoid direct confrontation if possible, which enabled them to escape large groups of opposition. Which is how I've always known a ninja is like you don't see them until it's too late, and probably a
Mm-hmm.
lot of super dope flips and parkour, and also throwing stars. And some of the dopest ninja scenes I can think of involve sword fights because they're like, I'm just gonna like swing once and make sure you die really fast. So ninja fights are super
Yeah.
badass. Many different schools or Ryu. Huh, I didn't know that. Cool. Have taught their unique versions of ninjutsu. An example of these is the Tagakure Ryu, which claims to have been developed after a defeated samurai warrior called Daisuke Tokugori escaped the region of Iga. He later came in contact with the warrior monk Kane Doshi, who taught him a new way of viewing life and the means of survival. Ninjutsu was developed as a collection of fundamental survivalist techniques in the warring state of feudal Japan. The ninja used their art to ensure their survival in a time of violent political turmoil. Ninjutsu included methods of gathering information and techniques of non-detection, avoidance, and misdirection. Ninjutsu involved the training in free running, which is parkour, called it, disguise, escape, concealment, archery, and medicine. Skills relating to espionage and assassination were highly useful in warring factions in feudal Japan. At some point, the skills of espionage became known collectively as ninjutsu, and the people who specialized in these tasks were called shinobi no mono. I don't know what no mono means, but I've always heard ninjas referred to as shinobi.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah, there was one story I heard about in like feudal Japan during a war, a ninja hid like he was probably small enough in frame, but also just small enough that he was able to conceal himself inside of the emperor's toilet, and he hid in there, and he waited for the emperor to like sit down to do something in the bathroom that who knows what he was going to do. But he put his bare ass in the toilet, and the shinobi just like a jack in the box sprang out of it with his little sword, and that's how he assassinated the emperor. And that's the most brutal thing I had heard in a very long time. I don't know if it's true, but
If there's any way I'm gonna die,
mhm.
that's for sure it. Because the
Haven't.
amount of times I have to go to the bathroom is unacceptable. Just a simple curse. I just be shitting. Like that's it.
One of the related articles for that was I printed this one out too because I thought it was kind of cool. It's also really short. It's the kunoichi. A kunoichi is a female ninja or a practicer of ninjutsu. During the feudal period of Japan, ninjas were used as killers, spies, and messengers. The training of kunoichi differed from the training given to male ninjas, although they had a common core of skills, being trained in martial arts such as taijutsu and ninjutsu. Kunoichi training tended to prioritize traditional female skills, which is a little binary, but we'll see if it means anything. The term is thought to derive from the names of characters that resemble 3 strokes in Japanese kanji. Character for women. Oh, this is the etymology. Okay. The word kunoichi is not used frequently in the Edo period. This is probably because in this era, the kanji letter this was not written in regular script, but usually in cursive script, and the cursive script cannot be decomposed into the syllables kunoichi. There's a history of it, but yeah, apparently there's also kunoichi, which were commissioned to recruit women to create a secret network of hundreds of spies. Um, there's a women's football team in Iga that uses the name kunoichi, which is pretty fucking cool. But yeah, there's just it's kind of the same as ninjutsu, but it's about the specifically the kunoichi, the female ninjas. So that's kind of neat. The kanji for it looks really cool. I can't really describe it to you over an audio medium, but I recommend looking up ninjutsu. It's fun. Bunch of cool
Kind of
videos on
speaking of
YouTube.
that in video games, did you ever play I Ninja on PlayStation 2? Huge favorite of mine.
You know, it's really funny that Sam actually showed me that game maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. We were he was showing
Mm-hmm.
me videos of it, and I think we figured out how to. We'll say we just watch videos of someone playing it on their computer with the PS2, like emulator. Um,
Yeah.
not that we did that. We watched other people do it on
Yeah.
YouTube. But yeah, we were watching iNinja. The main character is voiced by the same guy that voices Fry in Futurama. It looks really fun though.
Really?
Yes, yes, it does.
That's cool as fuck.
Yeah. Anyway,
Um,
uh, do you think you could tap in a little bit to the differences among some of the more well-known Asian cultures?
yeah, I mean, I kind of thought maybe I'd touch on the differences between ninjutsu and martial arts in some ways. I thought maybe you'd touch more on like the training or anything if you had any notes on that.
Oh, I wish. I know a lot of the fighting style is based on pressure points to just do fast one strike incapacitations, if not kills. But
Mm-hmm.
no, I actually don't know anything about the style. Any any tips or anything like that?
The
How much of a?
concept of that,
Mm-hmm.
so I was going to say the concept of that kind of reminds me of like Krav Maga, which was developed to literally like everything is just deadly. Like every single thing within the martial art is meant to just kill.
Holy fuck!
Not really much of just like um, self defense that is like I don't know how to explain it. Like Krav Maga versus other martial arts. Like Krav Maga, everything is like a kill shot versus other martial arts have like kind of like a check system where you have stuff that's like gonna help you get away, but it's not
Deflecting.
necessarily gonna maim the person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas Krav Maga is like everything is meant to just like debilitate the opponent. So
Do you know what some of those
kind of an
moves are
idea of
like,
like
or like what some of those attacks are?
um no, I never studied Krav Maga or like practiced it. Um, I mean, there are some similar moves within Shaolin that are
I've
just
seen a
like
lot of eyeball
instant, like
stuff,
yeah, yeah, mostly
eyeball and
eyeball
throat.
and like yes, yeah. Those
There
are
was
the main.
there was
Um,
um, I took a semester of jujitsu for college, and one of the few things I retained from that class was a move where the the sensei showed us like when someone like grabs your shirt collar, or if you're fast enough, you can catch their arm when they punch you. But this is how you like catch it and like swing it around into an arm lock. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. That's shit. I just clapped again. They're like, oh, okay, that's a neat safety tactic to put them in an arm lock. And they're like, and then when they're in the arm lock, if you want to, you can get them down on the ground while you still have control of their arm and you're standing up. So you can just kind of
mm-hmm,
stand up and pull their arm out. And we were
mm-hmm,
like, holy fuck, that's escalated quickly. And she was like, if you don't want to pull the arm out, though, you can just step on their head and throat a bunch. And this sensei teaching
Mm-hmm.
us was all like a 75-year-old woman, and she was doing this on like one of the bigger dudes in the class, and we were like, oh my god, we're gonna watch her fucking murder him. Because she was like, look, I can just step on his throat, and she was like stepping on his throat, and we are like, what the fuck? So
Yeah.
I imagine that jujitsu is probably just straight up like just hit really hard at this point in the throat as fast as you can from behind, and then she does it on someone and kills them.
Yeah. She's like, at least you know it works. Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
we did it. We gotta go now. The cops will be here soon.
Yeah. Let's get the fuck out of here, kids. She's actually like, you find out that she's been like, she has to keep relocating because she keeps killing people. Like, she's been on the run.
That's why we've been making all the checks out to cash. Um,
Yeah.
what were some of the like if you could describe any of the cool moves that you remember how to do, maybe like some pro tips on punching or choke holds that could be
Um,
explained over an audio medium?
I'm gonna state right now, I
Hmm.
am not necessarily legally, but I signed paperwork when I signed up with my dojo. I'm not allowed to teach anything because I did
Oh,
not go through a
beans.
teaching program. I can get in serious trouble for that.
What would some cool moves look like if we were to search your martial arts style on
Um,
YouTube?
honestly, it there's so much. There's a wide range. Shaolin, like I was saying in our Jack Black video,
Hmm.
it consists of like depends on what animal you're fighting
Oh
as,
yeah,
like
yeah,
what
that's
animal
right.
fighting style. So it really depends on what animal style. I wanted to say though, so like ninjutsu versus like martial arts. Ninjutsu is what a very like Japanese based
Yeah,
concept and
yeah,
idea. Ninjas and stuff. Whereas martial arts like that I think of um it's I'm pretty sure that's less of a concept in China. Difference there. Um, but like it kind of holds up with the culture of Japan versus China. Like Japan is very like take for instance karate versus kung fu. The
hmm,
Shaolin I learned is a mixture of karate and kung fu, but once you get more advanced, it's mostly just like old style, like traditional Shaolin temple training. But like Japan, that's where like karate comes from. And it's very just like the language. I'll get more into like the difference between like Chinese and Japanese, but
yeah.
Japanese is very like hard, shortcut, straight linear movements, and so is the language. It's very like a lot, when I think of Japanese, I think of like shortcut excerpts where
Hmm.
it's very like there's a lot of accents in it where it's almost like yelling. I think of like yelling and like samurais, ninjas, like the dramatics of that. Whereas like kung
Yeah,
fu is a very circular, round movement. Um, and it's very fluid and a lot like the Chinese languages. Um, so like a lot of like just their culture is reflected in even their martial arts.
that's really
And
cool.
when I think of ninjutsu, I think of karate as well, where it's very like you're working with a sword and there are round movements, but like I think of just the fighting style is very short, quick, like like dun dun dun, and it's how I imagine like karate movement. It's very like I don't know how to explain it, but yeah,
I think I get it.
just
Like
like
how a lot of it is transitioning into the next. That's what it reminds me of.
yeah, I don't know. That's kind of more like kung fu, more fluid. Whereas like karate is like
Hmm.
shortcut, dry, linear, like 1, 2, 3, like 1, 2, 3. Whereas like kung fu, this is such a bad example. Whereas like Kung Fu is more like cursive writing.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I was really lost in the thought about the circular movements of what that would look like in martial arts, and
Yeah,
I was like, oh, so a lot of it is like preparing for what comes next, and
yeah,
that's so crazy. That just reminds me of like physical freestyling.
yeah. A lot of
Like
like
as you
karate that I think of like versus like Shaolin, what I practiced old style, is like I'm not really sure the origin of Taekwondo, but I believe
mm,
it is from Japan.
a lot of
And
kicks.
yes, but a lot of the movements in that is like you think of more like karate based. It's not kung fu.
Yeah,
Um, so it's very like short, quick excerpts, a lot of power, quick snaps, like linear movements. Whereas kung fu, I think of like Jackie Chan and stuff.
yeah.
You
I didn't
know.
know Jackie Chan was kung fu.
Um, oh yeah. Old style.
Cool.
He plays around a lot with like monkey style, like Shaolin and
Fuck
other
yeah.
stuff. He works with other styles as well, but like ninjutsu versus like kung fu. I think of when I think of like the concepts of them versus the difference and kind of the idea of like the cultures of the countries themselves, like Japan versus China. I even like diving into it with the listeners here. Like the history between China and Japan has been very rocky and rough.
Yeah,
uh, they have not always been fans of each other, and their cultures have been very differentiating. I wouldn't say maybe most US Americans would be able to pick the difference between them, but like I feel like I'm reaching with this statement, but I kind of feel like in a lot of their cultures, like they're like back in time in history, very opposing on purpose due to the history there between them and the wars
mm,
that happened. When I think of like ninjas and like shinobi, Japan, just like the movie you were talking about, very big on honor and like family and like tradition and just like honoring that. And it's more of like I think of like a military based, like what can I do for my country versus what can my country do for me type deal. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
yeah,
very heavy imperialism, like military based with, so I think of like ninjas as soldiers and they're trained to be a part of this army versus like a spiritual journey that like more concepts within China and Kung Fu go through.
mm,
Whereas it's more as like a Chinese like martial art is going to be not necessarily just the martial art, but maybe like the history behind the martial art is going to be involved with more concepts of like spiritual journeys and stuff, and the histories with that, and just the ideas that I like
yeah,
compartmentalize them, differentiating. I think of like when I think of ninjutsu, I think of like honor and honoring my that like army and family, whereas martial arts is more of like individual self defense situation, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Well, so I took karate through from when I was like 9 until like 15, maybe. So far
Mm-hmm.
from my whole life, but definitely like I went through puberty as I was like learning Shotokan karate, and I got up to a green belt, which is like kind of slow because I would focus on it a lot more when I wasn't doing sports when I was little, and especially over the summers. And it I was in really good shape doing karate, but I remember specifically that all of our exercises were very blocky. There was almost no
Mm-hmm.
fluidity in
Mm-hmm.
especially in during the tests. It was like do this series that we practiced, and it was a series of punches. They were all called the
Mm-hmm.
tenakata, and the tenakata was I think it was like 21 moves done in an order where you kind of make a letter T shape across the room, and you have to do your kias, which is like a yell during certain power moves. which I
Yeah,
thought was really cool
we
because
call them. Yeah, it's called a ki.
yeah, key eyes. I
Yeah.
like I learned a lot from that because it was actually like the whole point in doing that is not just for show, like what I thought when I was a kid, but it's because when you like put your voice behind a punch, you really give it more oomph.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Yes.
power is there. And I never signed paperwork about not being able to not teach anybody. So I learned something really cool, and fuck it, I'm gonna say it on here because I have nothing coming against me. But for breaking the boards, like what they would always do in like the shows and tournaments and stuff, it was literally one simple secret that they told me as a kid, at least, about how to do it, and it worked. And it was that if you try to hit the board, your brain is going to stop your hand when it hits the board so it won't break.
Yeah, you want
And
to
he's
hit
like,
through it.
you need to hit through it. Yeah, exactly. He's like,
Yeah.
so you need to envision that your target is right behind the board and you're punching the target right behind it. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, okay, I'll try it. And literally, first try, without even much effort, I just pretended I was punching something behind the board and my fist went right through it. And I was like, holy shit, that worked. That's really cool. And I still do that, like, often if I'm, like, drunk enough at a party, like, hey, give me that thin piece of plywood, I'm gonna break it. And, it hurts my
Shit, I did
knuckles, so
similar stuff
obviously be
too.
careful, but it works. It's fun.
Yeah,
Like just
no,
punch through something and
it's
you will.
very similar concepts that I learned. Yeah. I've never been a big fan of like Taekwondo because it's been very
Oh,
Americanized, and it's been made
yeah.
to it's more of like a competitive dance. Um, a lot of Taekwondo
So
schools do
beautiful.
not teach you like yeah, they don't teach you effective fighting skills.
Mm,
Um, and they go through their ranks way too fast to actually have accomplished and sustained like a skill in something.
mm.
And so we went through a system where it's called the 100 uh, 100,000 10,000. And so it's based off of that. You have to do something 100 times correctly to memorize it correctly or to remember it correctly. You have to do something a thousand
Cool.
times to build a basic skill at something, and then you have
Okay.
to do something 10,000 times to have mastered it,
Cool.
which takes a lot longer than people think. So, like, in our system, it takes a minimum, like, the earliest anyone's ever gotten a black belt is like 4 years. And in our system, the equivalent, if you do an average of like the amount of time practicing and how many times you've practiced that move, when you receive your black belt, you literally are stating that you have only gained a basic skill at the basics.
Really?
And yeah, so when you receive mastery, which takes typically 8 years to achieve in our system,
Hmm.
then you have done all the basics 10,000 times.
So it's a skill.
And yeah,
Oh, no, no,
so it's
that's
like,
mastery.
yeah, and it's mastery of the basics, not even like the advanced
Fuck.
stuff.
Yeah,
And so
damn.
like in our system, it's a lot of dedication. Like you can't get your black belt in 18 months. So like in a lot of people that transfer from typical taekwondo schools in a black belt, they're literally given like an orange or purple belt in our system.
Damn.
It's not worth anything in our martial art, which I'm not saying like our martial art is the best, because um personally I love it because I find it very there's a lot of variety in it, and that it is, what is that word I'm looking for?
Tangible.
No, it's works in
Uh,
very many situations. I don't know the right word for
Versatile.
that, but yes, it's very versatile. And like and there are a lot of other martial arts styles that I respect because it takes a lot of time to develop the skills, and you're not just given a belt. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
have to take the time to build the skills. But I've never really had respect for like Americanized Taekwondo because it doesn't work very well in actual like fighting situations. It's not realistic.
Ooh,
Um,
we're stirring the pot
you
here.
know,
If any of you listening have done
yeah.
Taekwondo a lot, let us know what you think.
Yeah, honestly. Or any other martial art you've like practiced throughout the years. Share us your experiences with that. But a lot of
Yeah.
them that I have like respect for, like Shaolin, Wushu, Wing Chun, um, Hungar, Krav Maga, karate. I do have respect for karate. Jiu-jitsu depends on the studio for jiu-jitsu. A lot of that again is like very easy at a lot of dojos to just blow through the rank. And again, you have to practice something a lot. You know, we have this saying in our dojo that it's not practice doesn't make perfect; it makes permanent. You practice something wrong, that's not perfect. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, the
and
like the 6 years that I did karate, again, like seasonally, I only got to a green belt, which is the second belt out of, I think black belt
yeah,
was the seventh or eighth.
yeah.
So yeah, it takes
Um,
it's a fucking lifestyle culture commitment.
Yeah, not saying that Taekwondo, uh, in like altogether, is a shit martial art. You know, it looks very beautiful, and some
Hmm.
dojos like do take it to like a very effective like practicing style. I guess I'll say in self
Yeah,
defense. But in most cases that I found nowadays, it's very just like competitive and showy, like an art. You know, it's not
yeah,
very effective, and you just blow through the ranks. But I have seen a couple like dojos and read up where it's very like, you know, karate based. Other dojos where it's just it's taken very seriously. There's a lot of respect, and you know, just seriousness involved. I don't, you know.
yeah.
Um,
My favorite Tekken fighter, Warang, he did Taekwondo. His
yeah,
fighting style is
and
Taekwondo.
you know, not to say for listeners if you done Taekwondo, not saying that it doesn't take any like discipline and that it's not difficult to do. It very much is so with the moves. You know, the training isn't easy. It's just you know the differences in like how America
Shaolin.
has yeah has just
Yeah,
like taken this martial art and made it into like just like a show.
yeah.
So
So yeah, if you want to send an email to beezindatrap2321, that's BEEZINDATRAP at g or 2321 at gmail.com. You should hit us
yeah,
with
send
that.
us an email.
Do you wanna read any of our fan mail in this one, or do you want to save that for the bonus extra?
Why don't we split it? We do the two, and then the two
Sure.
on the next one.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
We
all right.
got we got
So
four nice ones.
speaking of our podcast email, we got some emails sent to us, and we got two here that we thought we'd share. Um, let's see here, Tack. This first one being the subject they put in was customer
Hmm.
service, and Barbara Bradford says this thing doesn't work. I don't have a receipt. Um, not sure how to help you,
Wow.
Barbara. Uh,
Thank you for emailing us, though.
um,
That really
yeah.
means a lot. Um,
Uh, let's see here. This one just says the Z. You've ended all your episodes saying the Z is universal. What does that mean? Love, Kale. Thanks for that email, Kale. Thanks for joining us in this in this
Thanks,
podcast
Kale.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're
that
we're actually going to keep recording. Like we're going to take a break right here, but if any of our fans want to hit up our bonus episode, which I think we're going to be putting it on Patreon.
yeah,
We're gonna end the public one here, and we're gonna save the rest for our most loyal bees.
yeah. We got our busy bees and our lazy bees. How about that?
Yeah, and we got the good stuff for the traps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Uh, hit us up on
Hey,
our next episode.
yeah.
Bye.
Keep it real. Disease universal. Toodles.
See you, Universal.